Good evening, everyone. This is Shubham Yadav, and I will be hosting today's webinar. I welcome you all on behalf of ESL IIT Guwahati. As you all know, user experience is very important to all the product managers because it is one of the key components among the pillars of product leadership. Using user experience, one can create a product that actually solves the problems of the users and reduces the frustrations of the users. To lighten the area of user experience in product management, today on board we have with us Mr. Saurabh Agarwal, Product Director at Gamescraft, previously worked with Flipkart, Paytm, and Honest Bee as a product manager. So without wasting much of your time, I would like to hand it over to Saurabh sir. Sir, you are mute.
Hi everyone. Shum, you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Hi everyone, this is Saurabh Agarwal. And first of all, thanks to the ESL team of IIT Guwahati for giving me this opportunity to speak to students and possibly pass on some knowledge regarding product management to the students. Uh, I'm currently working as a product director at Gamescraft, which is an online gaming company, and I am a pass out of IIT Guwahati of 2012. Okay. So moving on to the agenda for today, right? So we start off a little bit about myself, what I've worked over my experience. Then I'll possibly just give you a brief introduction into what product management is, right? Then we'll go through a typical product development process. What does it entail, right? Broadly, I'll not go into too many details, but broadly, what does a product development process looks like? Post that we look at how does user research into fit into it and what really user research is, right? Post that we look at some user research methods, okay? And after that, we'll have some examples probably from my own work experience and possibly some areas that you might look around you as well. Some opportunities where user research would be very critical in the coming years as well. And then the most important part, right, the Q&A. So I don't want this to be a monologue, right? So I want people to ask questions because that is very important, what you really want to know out of this, right? That helps you prepare for the interviews. Okay, so we'll keep all the questions to the end. Okay, let me just cover up the presentation and then I'll take up all the questions. It could be about anything, not necessarily only user research. You can ask me anything you would want to know about product management. Okay, a bit about my journey. Okay, I passed out in 2012 as a mechanical engineer from IIT Guwahati. Post that, I joined Flipkart as a management trainee, and by the end of 2015, when I went for my MBA, I became an assistant product manager at Flipkart. Post my, I went for my MBA to IIM Lucknow. There, I did my majors in finance, but I still loved product management, so that was very clear to me. That's why I still looked out for a job in product management, and I joined Paytm as a product manager out of Noida. Okay. At Paytm, I was primarily looking at the Paytm Mall side of things. So how does the user come to the Paytm Mall app, and how is its experience? Then after a couple of years, I joined Gamescraft, which is my current company. It's an online gaming company. It's into real money, and I've been there for more than 2 years now, and I have become a director in product there. Okay, so the basic question that we would start off, right, is what is product management, right? So how is it different from all other roles, right? And why is it so glorious, and why currently there's been a lot of focus around it, right? So how a lot of people introduce product management is a role of a mini CEO, right? Where what customers require, what customers desire is the most important uh, thing for a product manager. Product manager is the voice of customers in the company. Okay, and it's very important since you guys are still students, right? A company survives because customers use your product, right? Till customers are there, your work is valuable. If customers are not there, your work is not valuable, right? While this is true for all the organizations, product managers inside the company essentially is a voice of the customer, right? Meanwhile, business operations, marketing, right, would be more considered about their own metrics or their own performance, right? How do I improve the operational efficiency? How do I make my life of operations easier? Right? How do I reduce the damages inside the company for a logistics person, right? For a business guy, how do I get more sellers on board, right? But product managers is essentially concerned about what customers desire, right? And there, where, and this is where they answer the most important question in the company, right? What and why to build, right? This essentially lies, even though it's a joint ownership, not only product managers decide, but a lot of business people also give in their feedback. But it is, the buck stops with the product managers when it comes to decision making, right? You can take feedbacks, it can be a democratic decision, it is, right? But at the end of the day, you have to take a call and also align all the other stakeholders, business, marketing, above managers and other people in the company, that this is why we are building and this is what is important, right? The photo of the Steve Jobs is essentially what he used to do, right? So he is obviously an epitome when it comes to as an inspiration for any product manager, right? If you would have looked at his movies, his life journey, whoever has read, right? So I think that is the best example what you could see, right? When he talks of Lisa in the movie, or when he talks about his products, right? How can it be better for the customer, right? Think what the customer requires, right? When he launched iPhone, right? The focus on the customer experience. I think that is the epitome of what product management has to be. Obviously, not every product manager is like Steve Jobs, right? Neither we have so much power, right? But at the end of the day, that is what we want to emulate, what Steve Jobs used to do. That is what essentially product managers would love to do about their own product. Okay. An analogy generally given for product managers is like they are like directors in a movie, right? They don't act, they don't sing, they don't photograph, they don't plan the dances and all, right? But at the end of the day, they have an idea where this movie is headed, right? Okay, and what is their idea? They try to picturize that eventually in the movie, right? So at the end of the day, they are the owners. Meanwhile, every other player or the person performs their role and finishes up the movie, right? But the end of the day, director is very close to what the role of a product manager is. Moving on, so basic product development process, right? So any product development, right? Be it WhatsApp, be it Ola, right? Typically starts off, let's say an example of an Ola, right? It starts with the problem identification. That fine, it's very difficult to get a cab, right? You have to go out on the roads, you have to ask auto drivers, and there is obviously lack of access to auto drivers or cabs within your locality, right? How do you get it, right? How do you make it better, right? So that is a part of problem identification. This is very, very important when it comes to product manager's life, right? So this is a part where you identify a problem. What is the problem? And as the organization matures, like a Google or a Flipkart or an Amazon, it even becomes more and more difficult to identify this problem. Okay. But meanwhile, many of you might feel that everyone has a lot of ideas. How would you improve WhatsApp or a Facebook or a YouTube, right? But the next part becomes really important, right? So there are million things that you can improve about a product, right? But the opportunity sizing, right? Which problem to solve and how much value will it bring, right? This is a very, very important part. So you might see some issues with each of the product, right? But then you have to realize why they are not solved right now, right? Possibly because the returns that the organization or the company will get solving that problem is not sufficient. Okay, that's why probably they're not solving it, right? So one, identifying problem is tough, But even tougher is to identify a problem that will really make a impact on your revenue, your customer retention, or will matter a lot to your customers, right? That is where it becomes even more challenging. These two things combined, problem identification and opportunity sizing, both combined is a very tough problem to solve, right? And this is, so these weightages that I put in 30, 30, 20, 20, right, means where the product manager's focus ideally should be in a company, right? Where the value is given in terms of what he does, right? So these two are the major uh, pillars of a product management, right? Is to identify a problem, and that too, which is very relevant for the company. The other two steps that come into the picture is the solutioning. Once you know what the problem is, right? Once you have derived how big is the opportunity size or how much impact can you make, right? Then comes the solutioning part of it, where you work with the designers, right? Where you write a product requirement details, right? How will it look, right? How will it behave? What would be the user journey, right? So suppose you're building a product like Swiggy, right? So let's say you figured out that getting food to users at their homes is a big problem, right? Then when you're solutioning, right, you will essentially think about all the user journeys. He launches the app, the user launches the app. What does he see? He should see the right, the ones with the ratings being higher, right? He's able to place a order from a restaurant. Then he's able to see the logistics person coming to him. How much time will it take for the food to get processed, right? And then the delivery boy to actually deliver it to your house, right? And where is he currently, right? So that is basically broadly where you solution things out, build the UI UX. How will it look? You work with the design team, so not to worry that you don't have to design it yourself. Design is a separate skill which designers will do, but essentially you have to think about the user flows. What do you want in the product, right? And the UI UX will build it. Then tech will essentially pick up your product requirement document and the design, and then essentially start developing it. Okay, that's a part of solutioning, right? Then you prepare for the market launch. Whatever you have thought, right, might be a minor enhancement or a big product like a Swiggy launch, right? Then you plan for it launch, right? How will you get customers on board, right? What will be the MVP version of it, right? What is that the metrics that you've decided or the number that you have decided will move, right? What will be the impact on business, right? So do you have systems in place to measure that, right? Once you launch it, right, that is a major piece done, but another challenge comes post it, right? Is to analyze everything, what has gone well, what has gone wrong, right? And there is where you start iterating. You start measuring your product launch. How many users was it expected to actually being used by, right? So I expected 2 million users to use it, but somehow only a million users used it, right? Then you start measuring what went wrong in the funnel, right? Where is it going wrong, right? Even if something has done well, you also figure out why it has done better than expected, right? You start measuring, and all these things, whatever you measure, right, the funnels, the user journeys, right, then it leads back to you to the problem identification again, right? So I was expecting 2 million users to use it, but it has been used by 1 million users, right? Then you come back to the problem identification again to identify the problem, what has gone wrong, and then you start fixing it. That's essentially what is called agile methodology in the market. That's a term that's being used, okay? But that is essentially what is agile, right? You keep iterating over your product, right? How have you done? Okay. um, Now how does user research fits into it, right? So this is the product development process, okay? And where user research comes into picture is these first two steps, okay? And that will be valuable even when you launch the product. After that also these two steps become critical, right? The problem identification and the opportunity sizing, right? This is where user research plays a major key role in terms of helping product managers to understand these two things, okay? So what really user research is, right? User research basically helps you to understand who your customer is, right? It's very important to determine who your customer, what his needs and requirements is, right? Validate your idea or hypothesis, whatever you have built, right? That they will use it for this reason, right? They will use it this way, right? You validate your idea or hypothesis through various methods that I'll come to, okay? And then drive product refinements through it, right? Now, some of you might be thinking that it's very straightforward, right? So, Flipkart, the customers are people who are ordering, right? Or let's say everyone is a customer for Flipkart, right? Everyone who wants a product at home, be it clothing, be it mobile, is a customer, right? But that's very broad way to look at things, right? When you define a customer, you define what challenges does he face, right? So I'll give you some more examples in terms of how does this look like, right? How does user research I have done in my life, right? And how does it help to understand what to build next, okay? But think about, just keep this thought in your mind that really defines the end customer who is using it, right? What kind of person he is, what time does he have, what problems. Sorry, I think Shum, did I just went off for a couple of seconds?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Let me just, yeah. Okay. Screen is visible, Shubham?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Fine. So as I was saying, user research really helps you to know your customers really well. Okay. So I'll come to that probably a little more detail. Okay, in terms of how does it help. Okay. This is a very broad definition. Okay. So let's just look at some methodologies and then I'll come to examples, which is very relevant for this group so that they can understand better. Okay. Some of the user research methodologies that are being used in the market, right, is I'm not sure what's going wrong. Okay. Okay. Yeah, continue. Okay. Some of the research methods that is being used uh, is one you probably guys are aware about is surveys that come to you, right? You rate the delivery service that you've got, how. Okay, I think some issue on my side. Let me just. Okay. Fine, hopefully this time it won't happen. Hmm.
Sir, you are mute.
Mute. Okay, okay. Sorry. Yeah, the screen is visible, right?
Yes, sir. Sir, you are mute again.
Okay, fine. Okay. Okay. One of the user methodologies that you
Sir, again you are mute, sir.
okay, 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 let's see what's going on. So, is it fine now? ठीक है, fine. Okay, so the other thing that we look at in user research is
Sir, again you are mute, sir.
okay, I'm not sure why is it happening. Let me try out another way. Okay, let me see. Hopefully the issue doesn't come. Okay, the other approach that we follow for user search is user interviews. So basically, before launching the product, you sit with important customers of your own that you see as the end users of the product, right? You sit with them, you understand how will they use the product, what is the problem pain points, right? So this is something that is generally done before the launch, okay, of a product, much in higher numbers than possibly after the launch. Okay, this is done post launch also. Let's say if you want to build a loyalty product, right, for Amazon, right, for let's say Amazon.com, right? So you sit with people who have been buying from your platform and understand what matters to them, what matters with respect to Amazon.com on this platform, right? The other method is user testing. So what you do in this method is you give the product to a customer and let him use it. Okay. So you see how does he use the product, which areas does he look at, right? Does he actually do things or understand things as you interpreted it to be, right? So when you build a product, right, you think these would be important steps for the customer, right? And he should be able to understand things as he launches the app or as he sees, let's say when he launches the app or he logs in, right, he'll be able to understand where his wallet is, where his profile is, right? But this is a research where you essentially just let the user use it, okay, and there you'll realize a lot of things. So probably this confused the customer, okay, this is something that I didn't expect him to do, this is his interpretation of the product, right? So just let him play with the product and just see how is he using the product, which might be very different from what you would have thought of. Okay. So let's say take an example of e-commerce, and if people expected once you launch the app, people will start buying products, right? It is possible that some of the customers would start looking at where is my profile, from which account did I log in, right? How much money do I have? Does Flipkart has their own wallet, right? So these are all learnings that happens during this phase. You don't guide the customer, just let him use it. Okay. Then the refining product phase, right? So one of the key things that happens after product launch is A/B test. Okay, so I think some of you guys might be aware, some of you might not be. So A/B test is basically you launch a certain feature or certain product to customers, and 50% of them see it, 50% don't see it. Okay, the ones that you see, right, you see how much impact has happened to those customers, whatever you were determining. Let's say they will transact more. Let's say that was your analysis. Once this feature is launched, they will transact more, right? So what you do is you launch the feature only to 50% users, and you don't launch the feature to the 50% other users, and see whether this 50% users who you have launched the feature to have actually managed to order more or transact more from the platform, right? That is a validation that you do via A/B test. Okay. Another thing that we look at is the heat maps, okay, or let's say the click maps, some people call it, okay. Where does a user focus when he comes to look at your product, right? So one of the things could be that you felt that you build a scroll, but the user is essentially not scrolling, right? So from your product standpoint, you have built the information to the user where he can scroll and understand things. But if he's not scrolling, then it's essentially useless, right? So it's very important where how much time is the users spending on any place in your platform or your product, right? Then the voice of the customer. So these are all customer complaints. You get feedback from the customers, right? You call up customers to understand how did they feel about the product, right? Any place in your organization wherever customer can send an email, a call, right? You listen to their audio calls, what problems are they facing, right? So that really helps to understand whether what problems is the customer facing, and then you are able to refine the product. Okay. And then this is the last thing is a contextual user research. Okay. So what happens is, let's say uh, let's say you are from Britannia, okay, and you believe that you have good biscuits. So what you do is you go out to malls, right? People from Britannia company only, and then they look at people who are near the cookie shelf, and then they see how customers are reacting to their product, right? So it's very contextual. Nobody knows, right? That somebody is looking at them. Okay, you basically go out and see how your products are being used by customers. If you're a car manufacturer, you'll just go to the sales place for cars and then see how customers are looking at the product, what questions are they asking, right? Are they going for a test drive? What other issues do they have, right? Are they looking for any inbuilt kits into the car? Are they looking for other things, right? So nobody knows that you're aware, right? These are done by the company people, or generally you do third party tie-ups also, right? So this something that I saw in Flipkart as well, where we used to tie up with third parties and then see how people are consuming or shopping within the physical mall itself. Okay, so that we can replicate those things in the app. Okay. Um, yeah, moving on. So now I'll give you some examples that where you'll understand how has it helped me as a product manager over the years, user research, and how it has helped companies as well. Okay, so I'll take some examples from my work and some examples that you can see around yourself. Okay, so I was in this phase where Flipkart launched Marketplace, right? So when I went to Flipkart, essentially Flipkart used to sell all the products. After that, Marketplace came, and any seller in India could place or could sell their own products, right? So so while building the seller management piece, so we built a seller portal where users can interact with our systems, upload new products, change the pricing, right? Look at discounts, search for products, tag to products, right? What category of products they want to list, look at data, how much are they selling, right? All these problems had to be resolved, right? Now, while building this in our own office, it seemed quite reasonable, as in not very difficult, right? But when we essentially visited sellers, right, we got to know a lot more challenges, right? So seller sitting in even in a mall, or a reasonable amount of seller, let's say a Puma store person, right? He essentially does not have time to digitize information. He gets everything into a physical paper, right? He receives a physical invoice. He does not know product information so much. He does not is not tech savvy. He does not use the laptop much or a desktop, right? He is visiting people who are coming into their stores. He have to handle them, right? He have to greet them. He doesn't have the time for do all these things. While sitting in our offices, we felt it would be easy, right? They want to get onto online because they'll make more money. It should be very simple for them to move. But while seeing them work at their stores, right, we understood even for the bigger sellers who are reasonably more tech savvy, it'll be difficult because they have an offline job, and offline would contribute a lot more of their sales than online when you start, right? And there is when we realize the onboarding for the sellers has to be very simple. For them to upload listings have to be very simple, right? Even if they need handholding, we'll do it, right? So the platform has to be very easy for the sellers to upload the product, right? Otherwise, they will not be able to transition to the digital world. Okay. Similarly, on my recent role in Gamescraft, right? So when building all these things, right, whatever we have built in the last 2 years and more, what became very important, right, where we had a lot of success is to understand the user persona, right? A gamer comes to a platform to play games. That's his primary interest, right? Okay, that is very important to know when you're building features, right? What you're building may not be that important unless it affects his game or does it bring thrill to the game, right? Also, he has very limited time in the day, right? So our users is generally comparative above 22, 23. They are into jobs, right? And then at night they play games. So they have limited time. It's not as if you build something and they'll come in the morning. It's not that easy, right? Now, very important that within that limited time that we are able to give them maximum experience in terms of fun, thrill, and let's say whoever wants to play more games, right? So a lot of focus in ensuring that even if a user wants to start multiple games, right, and all those things, right, make it easier for him to do transactions, right, is important. Third, gamers are not interested in reading much, right? They directly want to get into the battlefield and start playing, right? Okay. And then there are also big cricket fans. So a lot of features that we have built or what we have built in the product, right, essentially does take care of all these points whenever we are building, right? It helps us, right? So during IPL, one of the features I could highlight is during the IPL, we want people to still play on our game table, right? On our app. So what we do is we keep showing the scores during IPL games on the game itself to the users, whoever want to see it, right? So that is a very small tweak, and that is very important for the users because they don't want to miss out on the action. If it's a close match going to happen, they will switch off the game, but they want to know, right? So that's how you keep looking at the user persona much more in detail and then understand what really matters to them. Okay. Another example from a recent work is this is our website, right? So real money gaming apps are not listed on Google Play Store because of reasons that they ask for 30% revenue and stuff. But leaving that aside, this is our MWeb page on the mobile website. This is how it looks, right? So this is basis all the understanding that we built of the users, right? So when they land to our page, our primary objective is to make them download the app. Okay. And what we understood from data, right, is only 19% users scroll. Okay. So only 19% users scroll this page and go below. That means all I have to do it within this space, right? If I have to make an impact on the user, I have this much space only left with me. Okay. And what we understood also that maximum generally on a 90 percentile cases, right? 90% of users spend max 15 seconds on our platform, right? So I have limited time also to influence these users, right? To download the app. So I don't have a lot of time. I cannot play a video. I cannot have so many things that he keeps looking at, right? It has to be easy for the user to understand and it has to be relevant, right? So third point is that what matters to gamers, right? Especially in our games, in Gamescraft, what matters is how many players are playing on your platform, right? And withdrawing money because it's real money gaming, right? So people want to know whether they can withdraw freely money back into the bank account, right? So that is very important to know what really matters to the user and what is the kind of interaction is he having with the product, right? I could have easily assumed that fine, they'll scroll. I have a lot of information. I'll play them. I'll play a video and sort of stuff, right? With 15 seconds, I have to ensure a 19% user scroll that they are able to download from this page and I have this much time only of them, right? 15 seconds also makes an important point that I can't have this my website load in 3-4 seconds. I have to get it loaded within a couple of seconds at max, right? The speed of the website also really matters, and all the possibly the trade-offs that you have to look at, maybe from a feature or the images standpoint, that you would have to make a call whether the speed matters more or let's say the creatives matter more. Okay. Some more examples, I think, where the struggle continues to happen and opportunities still are there, right? So these are from the future, right? So possibly somebody will solve it. One is, let's say, keyboard for gamers. I know this is somewhat solved, but there's still scope of improvement that continues, right? People use joysticks, but let's say for a keyboard for gamers, right, which something you guys can also relate, right? It does not come cheap, right? The others, nobody has solved it completely. Okay, there's still things that can be done to improve the experience for gamers. So it's a very niche, right? You need to look at how gamers interact with their keyboard, right? So just to give you an example, they'll be very rough. Okay, they'll make a lot of noise and they play at night, right? These are some of the things that you need to understand for gamers before building a keyboard for gamers. Understand, observe them really well, talk to some gamers, look at how they use the keyboard. Maybe they are also not aware about their idiosyncrasies. Okay, so that's very important. WhatsApp for elderly. WhatsApp is a huge app, huge company, right? They have 400 crore users across the world, right? But still they are looking to solve for elderly, right? Uh, so you would have to see how elderly looks at, right? Whether the buttons is really sufficient, the size of buttons is enough, right? The text size, is it good for them or not, right? What you want to build for them, right? So that's something WhatsApp will solve, possibly not solve because they don't see a lot of benefit coming out of it, right? Because WhatsApp primarily the user base that they focus on is the millennials, right? Who share, who will transact, right? Who will generate revenue for them also, right? So they're still focusing on that generation, which is right also, right? So I think at least 60 to 65% users are the millennials for WhatsApp, right? So they're still focusing on that. But any case, somebody will build WhatsApp for elderly also really well. One thing is you need to observe, understand their pain points, how do they use, and then build the product accordingly. Okay. Another problem that remains unsolved in the market is accounting software for merchants. So there are products like Khatabook, Intuit has been there, right, for a long time. But the bigger challenge that they possibly face is whatever process that the sellers have to use or the merchants in the shop have to use, right, is a little bit tedious for them, right? Because they again the same problem that probably Flipkart face, right? The merchant in the store is essentially there to sell the product, right? He's more worried about making money rather than accounting what transactions happen, right? So how do you make it so seamless that he doesn't have to spend time? Okay, because he has a lot of work in the shop to do, right? He has to look at what has gone out of stock, right? Who is coming, greeting the person, right? Taking cash from him. Plus, then you are asking him to put things into this product, right? That's where whoever solves this user problem really well and understands the merchants really well, their pain points, right? They're still not tech savvy, right? They have mobile phones and all, but scanning and putting transactions in, understanding this transactions, filing their income taxes, very still very difficult for them, right? Whoever understands these problems really well and builds a product around it, right, will be able to lead the market in India for this product. Okay. Now coming to the $1 billion question, right? How does this help me in the interview? That is where all your focus would be, right? So whenever the interviewer asks you, right, how would you want to improve YouTube, right? Or what do you think Facebook should do next, or WhatsApp should do, or what should Ola do, right? It's very important to think about. So you might have a lot of ideas. This is what they need to do. Okay. But you have to think about why, for whom, and what to build, right? Who are the most important customers for Facebook today, right? Whether what you're building really goes with the core value proposition of Facebook or Ola or WhatsApp, right? and will it matter to the customer so much, right? That's very important to understand. And then essentially this is where you focus on the core customer, right? You're building the product for whom, right? Does he have the time, right? Will he give value to this product? What is his core motivations, right? So you can build a YouTube within WhatsApp also, right? But WhatsApp primarily is used as a communication platform, right? It's very important for WhatsApp to keep focusing on the communication piece, right? Can I build uh, communication more seamless, right? Why do I need the use of a text, right? Why do I need to type, right? Can't voice to text happen automatically? Why do I need to click on WhatsApp and then it should open on my phone, right? These things should be core to WhatsApp, right? Because this is what they've solved in the market, right? Meanwhile, yes, you can build Instagram stories, reels into WhatsApp. That is a possibility that can happen. E-commerce will also be built in WhatsApp. But the core value, right, is very important to understand for WhatsApp, right? And that is where they'll keep on focusing on improving. Okay. Similarly, whenever a question is asked, understand why the product exists, why the customer exists, and right, and understand why the customers are important to you, and will they be ready to use that feature? Okay. Fine. So I think we have good 15 minutes. Yeah, I am ready to take any questions. Any questions around the slide? Anything I missed out probably? Anyone can ask. And then anything apart from the slides also, anyone can ask.
So if anyone has any questions, please write them in the chat box. I will convey to the sir. So Sham asked, what are the things one should include or exclude in a user persona?
Okay, so Sham, I would suggest never to exclude anything. Okay, everything is important. Okay, whatever you can derive out of it, right? Now, when looking at, let's say, when I was in Flipkart, if I even looked at their personal life, right? Let's say if I have some information about their personal life, or let's say their interest into cricket, right? You take that information into account. Whether that makes sense for your product, right, is a later understanding that you can build. So you should not exclude anything. That information might come in handy later, right? So for example, when we looked at these sellers, right, in Flipkart, we understood they lack finances, right? They don't have finances. Hence, Flipkart built an arm to help them financially as well. Okay. So every information is relevant. Eventually, how do you make use of it is important later on. Some might not be useful in the near future, but it's okay to still keep an account of it.
Ayush asked, you understand your customer very clearly. You have a good idea of how market works. So why don't you start up?
Okay, so Ayush, that's true. Okay, it's not that I've not tried. Okay, it didn't work out for me. Okay, back in 2015, we tried out something which uh, Ola rideshare. Okay, which came up with. So we do have an understanding, right? So you keep looking for opportunities. I'm not saying no to startups. Okay, it's a matter of how much risk do you want to take, and how conviction what is your conviction about the product, right? So there's no right now. Okay, it may happen in the future, and we keep thinking, right? So it's among my friends, I keep thinking. I have a friend who has come back from US also to do a startup only, right? So it may not happen till now, but it can happen in the future, right? So how do I see my career as of now? It helps me on my path to a startup as well. Now whether that works out or doesn't work out, there are other things as well. Not only how much value you prepare, how much value you think, right? There's always an element of time. When do you hit the market? Also a luck, right? So nobody knew TikTok would be a huge success, right? The success that it has been, right? So there's element of luck as well. So yes, so product managers essentially does have a little better edge over starting a startup. So I'm not ruling it out by any ways. Yeah, sure.
With this, we come to an end of the. Wait, we have one more question, sir. Saurabh asked. Oh, wait, sir. So Ayush say. So you expect. So we can expect a startup from you in future.
So, Ayush, the important thing is being satisfied. Okay, whether so the way to create jobs is just not being a startup, right? So, if you look at Google, if people from Google hadn't come to good ideas, right, product managers or let's say engineering managers, whoever came up, they wouldn't have employed 30, 40,000 people across the world, right? So the way to generate jobs is just not startup. Even if you can get into an early startup and build products, create more lines, right? So if Ola could create so many jobs because product managers within them have created so much work, right? So that is also a way to be satisfied in life in creating jobs. Obviously, startup brings a lot more satisfaction in terms of what you are doing, right? So I will not rule out, but till I'm not in a startup, I will still continue to try to create more jobs in the market, contribute wherever is possible. I think Flipkart today employs a huge number of people in India, right? Around 20,000 delivery guys, right? And that has happened because of the people who invested their initial years, much before me also. It started in 2008, and I've done an incredible job, right? So, so that's my answer, right?
Vivek asks, what are the things you expect from the CV of a candidate?
Okay, that'd be tough. Okay, so if you are a student, it's very difficult, right? To give your experience of a product manager, right? So what is important is, I think, your academic skills, right? So whether you have done so, I think that could vary. But personally, what I look at is hardworking people, right? So your resume, your CGPA is a slight indicator of it. If it's not your CGPA, then how is your extracurriculars, right? Or position of responsibilities that you've taken, right? So you must do something well. Okay. Second is if there are competitions inside the campus, which surely happens a lot. At least I know about IIT Guwahati. You should participate more in that, right? What is important for product managers is their thought process and be able to solve problems, okay, complex problems, and break them into small problems, right? So wherever you get an opportunity, be it a competition, be it your tech fest, right, when you build autonomous bots, right, take that opportunity, right, try doing that. That will give an inclination to the interviewer, right, whether you're really interested in solving important problems, right, and you have an inclination uh, towards solving big problems, okay. None of the interviews really expect from a student to have any previous background, okay, and that's why I didn't go too much into user research, right? So no interviewer will come to you and say you have done a user research. You have not, right? It's literally impossible with the studies and other stuff that happens in a college to do a user research unless you have an idea of a startup, right? So they're not expecting out of it. What they're expecting is reasonable hardworking student who has shown interest in possibly a couple of things and then is able to have a decent idea about product management, okay, that you would have to answer via questions, right? That's where, how do you structure your answer? Do you have a previous understanding of what product management is, right? And then if you reasonably answer well, you should be able to get a job.
Saurabh asks, how hard is to be a PM without an MBA?
Okay, so you can be a PM without MBA. You can be a PM without engineering also, right? Without any bachelor's also. That's okay. Even if you've studied till 12th, you can be a PM, right? What does MBA help you out is just increases your probability. Okay, what we all do with degrees, right, and studies, right? So you can become a product manager even without a bachelor's, right? But with IIT degree and let's say good college degree plus an MBA, it just increases your probability to make that decision, right? You can reach out to more companies because you have that kind of a resume, right? So it's just a matter of increasing probability. And another thing is, don't look at always education from the matter of getting a job. Okay, that's something I think when we were there, Gautam Barua was our director, right? That's very important. Okay, education is about enlightenment, understanding things. Okay, So MBA, if you go for, do not go for because I want to get into product management. Okay. Go into MBA because you want to learn, right? And take things as it comes, right? Understand it. It'll give you a new insight about other things as well. Okay. So don't go with a very narrow focus of getting a job to do MBA. I didn't go because I was already a product manager. I went because I wanted to learn. Like that is very important. And on the way, then if you still want to be a product manager after MBA, then it'll just help you. You have it on the degree, right? You have the capability, and MBA will also help you to refine your product, the thought process, right? So MBA has a lot of competitions where so there'll be competition like ITC will launch a competition where they'll ask you to think about a new juice product, okay? Or a Mahindra would ask you to think about another thing, okay? So there it'll help you refine your thought process, okay?
So the next question is how to get some experience in this role since almost everyone is asking for some previous experience for intern.
Okay, so one of the things that worked out for me, right? I was initially into an analyst role, right? So I used to report to product managers. That is something that you guys are easier to get, right? So you get basically analytical skills and you start analyzing data and all, right? And then you start working with product managers. While you work with product managers, you tend to understand what their job requires, and slowly you build above into a senior business analyst, and then they give you an opportunity for an APM role. That is one of the traditional ways to become product managers. There could be others, but that's possibly if none of the others are working out. If you get a good break in product management, great job done, right? If you still can't get it through because you don't have experience, try for an analyst role in Swiggy, Flipkart, Amazon, all these places. This will really help you to build your product management skills.
Around one idea or view. So how to shift to different approach or look to different problems.
Okay, so I think one is whenever you stick to an idea, right? Always think of pros and cons. Okay, never always believe that you have got a great idea. Okay, always scrutinize your idea. Okay, that is one thing. Okay, don't be too much optimistic. Otherwise, you will never see the cons of it. Hence, you will not be able to understand possibly other approaches. Okay, and if you start criticizing your own idea, this is why it will not work out, and take a more fundamental approach to the problem. Okay, then you will be able to realize other solutions as well. Possibly there are very few cases where you'll just not know another solution, but it's always a good thing as a product manager. Have 3, 4 approaches in mind. Think about pros and cons for each of them. Okay, and then weigh in qualitatively which one is the best you think in the given situation. Okay, if you're thinking just one solution and being overly optimistic about it, I think then you're slightly not thinking broad, right? You're not actually forcing your brain to think even more.
So the next question is how to not be biased while doing user research.
So very simple. If you're aware that you can be biased, make sure that you go with a free mind, right? Unlearn everything that you know, right? When you do user research, you essentially just observe the user. Don't put in too much of brains while going into, don't expect anything, let him do, just observe, right? And that's where the first question that was asked, right? What should not be a part of user persona? Don't think about that time. Just understand each thing that he's doing. Then once you have observed him, then start putting brains, right? So you'll not face biases that time, right? So just observe, okay, and unlearn everything that you would think that you know about the customer. It's a tough thing to do. You have to consciously do it.
So the next question is this is regarding the IPL scorecard in the game. Doesn't that feature make the users go out of the app? How did your team decide to do that trade-off? What metrics are taken into account?
Okay, so it does not take you out of the app. So the integration is organic. Okay, we are also able to fetch the score real time for an IPL match. Okay, and the metrics we did an A/B. Okay, So when we did an AB, we saw it to 50% users and then saw that they were retained higher than the other guys. Okay, I'll not go into details how was it organic, but just believe it, it's not taking you out of the app.
With this, we come to an end of the session. It was very insightful session on user experience by you, sir. Thank you for your time. I would also like to thank the audience for their presence at the session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.